Okay, in the last couple of videos we've been making a client-side chat program. Very simple. Again, this is a client-side chat, which means we don't have any back-end services. We have no server that actually communicates and connects the different clients. This is all what would be done just on the client side, what one user would see. Since we aren't connecting to other clients, all we can really do at this point is chat to ourselves. But this gives us a really nice concept of some basic HTML, some elements, modifying those elements, and adding content to those elements. All right, so last time we added the functionality where I could type something and press enter and it would go into the chat view. I can type multi-line by saying a shift enter goes to a new line in the text box, and then B shift enter C, and then when I press enter, all of that goes into the chat view. Also, when I press enter or click send, the box, the chat box is cleared, right? I don't have to manually change that. And then when this chat view fills up, it also automatically scrolls to the bottom. So these are some very basic features in practically every chat program. And there's a couple other things we had to do here. We noticed if I had Newline characters, A, B, and C in here, and I click send, if I inject them into this chat view with inner HTML, and that's what we're doing here. We've got this chat view element dot inner HTML, and we're setting that to the old chats plus this new message, right? So if I do that, just by default, the new lines will not render in this chat view, right? So it would really just say hello and then A and then B and then C all in one line. What I had to do is add a cleanup function that searched for those new line characters and replaced them with BR tags, because in HTML, the BR tag is how you actually render a new line. That's one way to do it. So that's what we ended up doing here. And that's all well and fine. That's very nice. But we should actually probably be doing a little bit more cleanup. Now the reason is this cleanup is important. It gives us the multi-line functionality, but we have to also be concerned with some other things. Since this view is using inner HTML, theoretically, if I type in HTML here, image equals source equals, we'll use place kitten. This should be an image of a kitten from placekitten.com, right? And since we take the text from this text area and inject it in here with inner HTML, theoretically this could render the image. And sure enough, it does. Now that could be a feature. That could be a feature. But there are some things you have to be concerned about. First of all, what if I actually did want to send the image tag? Say I'm explaining something to somebody and I'm telling them how to use HTML, and I'm trying to show them how to use an image tag, and every time I type it, instead of actually giving the text of how to show the image tag, it actually produces the image, right? That's not generally what I would want, okay? So it could be a feature, but generally that's not what you want. So there's also some other more serious security side effects from that. For example, let's say we have image source equals, and we'll do our place kitten again. And you do have to have an image that, oops, did it again. You do have to have an image that loads for this next thing to work. And then I add an onLoad attribute. Okay, we know that these attributes are event-based. So as soon as this image loads, whatever I have in these quotes is going to execute as JavaScript. So I can do something that's, rather innocuous. It's not really a big deal, but it might make somebody freak out, right? I could say window.alert, and then have to use single quotes because it's in double quotes, and I can say you / single quote to escape the single quote, you've been hacked. Okay, so when I press enter here, did I get the, let's inspect and see what I did. Window.alert. Oh, I left off the .com and place kitten. Okay, let's copy that, copy element, paste, and we'll just go placekitten.com. Okay, so now notice it didn't work when I had a bad URL. It only loads, the onload only executes when the image is found and actually loaded into the HTML. Okay, so now we press enter and we see it did load the image, and then we get this message that says you've been hacked. I mean, theoretically, this isn't really doing anything. It's like I said, it's rather innocuous, but it can be, you know, frightening to people. There are some other things you could do too, right? So let's say, let's go back to that div. Well, actually now every time I type something, that's going to show up again because all of the chat message is removed from inner HTML, right? We get all the chats, we take whatever is there in inner HTML, and then we load it all again. So now anytime I type something, it's going to give me this message, right? So let's clear this, we'll start over, and we'll try something else here. There are many, many, many more malicious things you could do with this, right? So we could say image source HTTP place kitten.com 100 100 and then onload equals / greater than. Okay, so now what JavaScript do I want to put in here? Well, more malicious than just a silly alert would be something like this: document.get elements. Notice the plural, elements by tag name, right? And I want to get the element that is the body tag, and it's elements, so it's plural, even though there's only supposed to be one body tag. Usually you would use this with like a div or something, and so there'd be a bunch of them. We just want the first one we find because there should only be one, and then I can say dot inner HTML and set that equal to the empty string. So if you take a second and realize what that's doing, we're grabbing this body element and replacing all of its inner content with nothing. So it's basically going to wipe away all of these elements, but more than that, it's also going to wipe away all of this JavaScript that we have, rendering our page pretty useless. Okay, so assuming I have this down right, I'm going to copy it just in case I missed a little something. Okay, as soon as I press enter, so I must have slightly missed something there. Inspect element, document, get elements by tag name, body 0, inner HTML. Oh, I did double equals instead of single equals. Okay, right. So that was just going to say true. But I want to set it equal to nothing, right? Now you see, as soon as I run that, my whole page is pretty much wiped out. If I look in body, you know, this is what's actively loaded in my page. There's nothing in here. I can click on this. My whole page has been wiped out. Now even that is not particularly too dangerous because anyone can open up a console and just say document.get elements by tag name, body, and get the first one, say dot inner HTML equals the empty string, right? And I can just press enter and it wipes it out too, right? So the console is kind of dangerous, and but you do need to be aware this does open you up to certain types of attacks that you might not necessarily be aware of, especially if you're sending information to a backend service. Okay, if I'm sending something to a backend service, and especially like a chat program, if this is going to someone else's computer, whatever I type here is not only going to my chat view, it's going to someone else's chat view too. So then it's running on their computer. Now that's where it gets dangerous. Okay, it's not just running on mine, like my console. So in a chat program, you're sending this to a server that's connected to other people, and then that message is being rendered on their views. So now you've injected code, malicious code of some kind, into their onto their web page. Now this can be bad for a number of reasons. If it's just your own machine, it's your own client, you know, you can look through all the source code and try to figure out, we look at the sources, we can see, you know, what's inside chat.html, and we can download these files and look at them and understand how a code works. But generally there's some API in the back end that we're communicating to. The API is Application Programming Interface. It basically just means the set of functions and set of methods that you can call on your backend service to do something. For example, like send a chat message or log in a user, right? And so these users all have user data associated with them, right? They might have, you know, addresses or, you know, shopping carts or anything like that, or IDs that allow them to buy things. There could be personal information. So if I inject some JavaScript here, it gets sent to the server and goes into somebody else's machine and runs somebody else's browser. It could grab their customer data and then send it back to me, right? And then I'd have access to their customer data, and then potentially I could go buy something like that, right? So there's a lot of ways this can be really, really dangerous, and it's important that you understand that aspect of it. So you have to be very, very, very careful whenever you are executing something that somebody else wrote. So inner HTML sometimes is kind of a tricky thing to use, right? It allows you to do cool things like add images, but there's a lot of danger in there. So you have to do some things to mitigate the danger. So one of the things you have to do is, for example, if I want to, you know, type a less than symbol, if I post this into this view with inner HTML, it's going to assume that that is some sort of tag, right? It's going to assume that this is supposed to be an image tag, even though I might actually just be trying to tell someone what an image tag looks like, right? So what we need to do to clean this up, so that it's the security reason, but also generally somebody might want to just show somebody some HTML and not have it be converted into the rendered version of the HTML, right? So in this cleanup message function, we need to do a little bit more. All right, all we're doing here so far is we're finding the Newline characters and replacing them with BR tags. Right? So we need to be a little careful here because we need to do this one last, because we're trying to search for these less than characters. That's the first security risk that we're going to try to mitigate. We're going to search for any less than characters and replace them with the HTML entity associated with that, LT. So ampersand LT semicolon. These characters are called together, they're called an HTML entity, and it's basically an escape sequence. Kind of like in strings we use \n, that means a new line character. This series of characters is an escape sequence that means in HTML, when it's rendered, we actually want to render this less than symbol, but the HTML code for that is this. And this is going to allow us to solve that problem when somebody types in, you know, an image tag here. It's going to allow us to solve that problem, that potential security risk. Instead of actually rendering an HTML image, instead it's going to render this less than symbol as an actual less than symbol. Okay, so that's that first thing we want to do. But we have to do that first, because if otherwise, when we replace our Newline characters, we're adding in one of these BR tags that has a less than character. And we actually want this one in there. Right? So this part has to be done last. All right, so let's do that. We're going to say found index. Okay. So I just declared the variable here. And what we're going to do, basically, this is searching for one character, and as many times as it can find it, it replaces it with something else, and then starts the search again, right? We're going to do this for the less than character. So we can just copy and paste this. We can reuse this code. Right? So what are we searching for? Instead of the Newline character, we're going to search for the less than character. If we find one, we want to replace the less than character. And what do we want to replace it with? We want to replace it with the HTML entity we were just describing, right? Which is ampersand LT semicolon, right? And then we want to search for another less than character. All right. So this replacement is 4 characters long as opposed to the BR tag, which was 5. So we're going to make that 4. And now we're good. Now we have successfully mitigated the danger of adding HTML to our chat messages, right? So we can replace that, and we can say image source equals /image, and it doesn't matter what we type in there because it's actually going to show up now. This, if we inspect the code, the chat view, instead of having an actual HTML element, we see we have this string data, right? So this is a text node, and this is the content inside of that text node, right? So it shows up a little funny in this elements view. But what's happening is there was an ampersand here, ampersand LT semicolon, and that tells the browser to actually render that individual item instead of rendering HTML. Okay, so that takes care of that one. But what if we want to add other HTML, like say the ampersand HTML entity is ampersand AMP. Okay, so this is the HTML entity to generate an ampersand character. But if I type this and press enter, it replaced ampersand AMP with an actual ampersand. That's not what I wanted. I wanted it to actually show ampersand AMP semicolon. Okay, so we have to escape that. And in HTML5, these are the 2 primary things you need to escape. You don't really need to escape much more than that. In HTML4, there was a litany of things you needed to escape. They've done a pretty good job about minimizing the numbers of things you need to escape. You would need to research this in depth if you're going to do anything on a professional level with it, but for the most part, this will get you the vast majority of the way. All right, so instead of searching for the less than symbol, here we want to search for ampersand. We're just going to copy and paste the code we had before and just change it up a little bit. Instead of ampersand LT semicolon, it's ampersand AMP semicolon. This is now 5 characters instead of 4. So we switch that, and then we're searching for the ampersand. Okay, we save that, and now we can basically refresh the page, and now I can try the same thing I did. So I'm actually typing in the HTML entity here, and if I did it right, I actually see the ampersand AMP here. Okay, so those are the 2 main things you need to escape in your chat program. Okay, and that is very important. That is a security issue. So whenever you are using inner HTML or adding text to a DOM element that is to be rendered as HTML, it's very possible that you can have JavaScript injected into that HTML. It's called an injection attack, and it's very important you're aware of that. So be very careful with using inner HTML if you're injecting anything that the user has typed. If you're injecting the HTML and you're positive you know what it is because it's from your code, that's one thing. But when you're getting something that someone malicious could type in whatever they want, that's another thing altogether. Okay, so it is important to be aware of the injection attacks. All right, so that takes care of the security aspect. And so actually on this next one, we're going to go ahead and try to do some emojis.